Michael Boyle's StrengthCoach.com presents the Strength Coach Podcast, brought to you by Perform Better, the experts in functional training and rehabilitation. PerformBetter.com.
All right, hey everybody, welcome to episode 386 of the Strength Coach Podcast, brought to you by Perform Better, the experts in functional training and rehabilitation. I'm your host, Anthony Renner. The show notes are located at strengthcoachpodcast.com, on the strengthcoach.com and NBSC.TV Coach's Corner. Spent a little extra time with Coach Boyle today. We spoke about progressing to single leg plyometrics, and that was from a Ben Griffin tweet. Actually, for the most part, Coach Boyle doesn't really progress. He starts everybody out, or, the athletes out right away. So I wanted to kind of get the standards there. Also, some standards on single leg strength, both male and female. That also came from a tweet from Joe Aratari about just showing a young female doing some really good strength work with some rear foot elevated split squats, and Coach Boyle thinking he had to rethink some of his standards. And then we kind of went into a long discussion about how it's getting tougher and tougher to find coaches interested in college jobs. There was a big discussion on Coach Boyle's Twitter page. And then we kind of segued that into, are we our own worst enemy? And that's an article that he wrote on Simply Faster about strength coaches and how our actions and perception over time has kind of hurt the field. And it's not just that. It's not just us. It's a kind of a conglomeration of a bunch of things, but went pretty deep into that. For the Naamly Maximizing the Member Experience with Sumit Seth, the founder of Naamly, today Sumit talks about leading from the front, all about the power of clear, caring, and decisive leadership and how it can influence the staff and member experience. We also continue our special 3-part series from Varsity House Gym and the Business of Strength called The 3 Pillars of Scaling Your Gym Business. Today in part 2, Coach Joe is going to talk about people and how important it is to have the right people and how it can make all the difference in your business. So he's going to talk about, how you have to think about what you need for your team and kind of almost like filling in the gaps as you grow and as you try to scale. Don't forget, these guys are having their strongest year retreat September 19th and 20th in Scottsdale. And it's a 2-day gym business specific mastermind with lectures, workshops, breakout sessions, social networking events, and it's for gym owners who want to scale their business beyond $500,000. Now, you guys, you can save some serious dough here. Go to BOS Retreat, BOS, Business of Strength, retreat.com, and put in the code StrengthCoach300. You'll get $300 off. It's an incredible offer from Joe and Dan. Guys, right now, the biggest sale of the year going on to Perform Better. You want to talk about saving money? 118 products up to 40% off right now. Rowers, air bikes, dumbbells, kettlebells, racks of all kinds, bands, everything. So much more. Check it all out at PerformBetter.com for their huge summer sale. Lots of things to get to, so let's get on the phone with Coach Boyle. All right, guys, now it's time for the StrengthCoach.com and NBSC.TV Coach's Corner with Coach Boyle. Remember, you can try both sites out 7 days for free. Go to StrengthCoach.com or NBSC.TV. Remember, you're basically a fly on the wall with NBSC.TV. And I was looking at the forum this morning, actually, and a lot of times with the updates, like there was somebody had a question for Coach Boyle and the staff really about updates to the program. And Kevin was thinking, hey, we need to do a webinar with all updated stuff. So it's like the most updated place where you can get Coach Boyle's programming. We're actually going to have a couple questions on exercises, et cetera, that kind of come from the forum. So check those out. Coach, how you doing?
I'm doing great, Anthony. How are you?
All right. You just got back from Perform Better. So we just always want to mention that. I saw a lot of people posting online. Actually, Lee Taft had a great session where he was doing these reach and roll with the ball. I tried it with my clients. Everybody loves it. And it's kind of a brilliant idea. It's almost like one of those, like, yeah, why didn't anybody ever really kind of think of that?
Lee's a pretty good thinker, though. I got to give him credit. He doesn't follow the crowd. He doesn't do what everybody else is doing. So
He doesn't.
Good. Greg Rose is, as always, was really good. Greg had us all thinking, and okay, because he was kind of along the same Hunter Eisenhower, like they're looking at the force plate outputs of the best golfers and realizing that these guys, like, they're practically jumping off the tee when you really see these guys. And then that sort of reflects, okay, are we throwing med balls wrong? So we actually have not this Tuesday, this Tuesday we have our first staff meeting, but a week from next Tuesday, we'll have sort of that let's process the perform better thing meeting so we can talk a little bit about med balls and how we're throwing, and are there things that we can change that our clients can do? Because some of this stuff, and sorry, I'm as usual, all you need to do is like, you just hit play and then I talk. But I always say to the athletes, I can remember as far back as with my sister-in-law, Karen, when we'd have the guys at BU, sometimes they would do an exercise different and she would say, they're doing that wrong. And I would be like, I don't know if they're doing it wrong. Let's watch them for a while. They're definitely doing it different. They're not doing it the way I thought it was going to look, but that's not necessarily wrong. And that's where you get into things like sport specific adjustments and realizing, wow, the way this person who's elite at this would strategize to perform this skill is really, really interesting versus the way we might see it. And in our heads, teach it based on, we always talk about our lens, right? But how am I looking at it? Maybe I'm looking at it through the lens of, well, this is how it was taught to me. Or maybe I remember Mark Verstegen loves the rotational row, but he deals with baseball players. So his guys would get really wide and really low, like they were going to field the ground ball. Our guys would do it almost parallel feet and leaning sideways, like they were turning a corner. And it's really the same exercise. It's the same sort of rotational pattern, using your edges, transferring weight. But what a hockey player is going to do to transfer weight is entirely different than what a baseball player is going to do to transfer weight. So it's super interesting. Sorry, I apologize.
Yeah. The Greg Rose one is pretty simple, but at the same time, it's super complicated. It's really hard we can't even explain it here. He would have to come on. And then it's weird because like when he was rotating and using that left leg to jump for the force plate stuff, right? Because they've been using force plates forever in golf. And so I think, but just it's interesting because it's all rotation, right? Because he's got the on base U too. But
right,
there's some heavy stuff there.
His rotation really is kind of right to left translation. So it's very much, even though it's transverse plane, it's really frontal plane. Like if you think about golf, you're really moving hard as hell through that frontal plane trying to drive that ball. And in some ways, you're trying to limit your rotation. People who rotate too much, hook or slice, right? Do I sound like I know something about golf?
Sounds like it, kind of.
But you know what I mean? Like somebody, they always over rotating. And the reality is, and it's like hitting, it's the same way. And you talk about a guy like Ortiz, when they look at the spray charts, always going to the same place because you could see, hey, he gets around at this speed and this is where he connects with the ball. 90% of the time, the ball is going, let's say, down the third baseline. And so that's where the shifts came from in baseball because they realized there's patterns. So, and this is the stuff, it's funny, we argue about the 90-10 or the 80-20 idea in terms of sports specific, but there is some stuff that really is specific when you start talking about rotational sports. But I think you really need to know rotational sports. And sometimes the best thing you can do is nothing. The best thing you can do is stay out of the way unless you really know what the hell you're doing.
Yeah, true. I actually, to your point with the, is he doing it right? Is he doing it wrong? Or to Karen's comment is, I always tell people when they're in athletic stance doing like a press or something, like a cable press, I'll just say, is that how you stand in golf for my golfers? Right. I don't care. I'm not going to judge you. Are you that wide? You are? Great. Let's keep it like that. Whatever they're doing,
Yeah, I always say, why are you doing it that way? Because I want to know, I want to see, I think some of you really good athletes haven't even thought about it. They might look at you and say, what way? What do you mean? Like, what am I doing that's different? What am I doing that's not right? And then you show them and they kind of look at you and think, oh, the way that you were going to tell me to do it doesn't make any sense. This makes sense. And that's why I think you can learn especially with elite athletes, you can learn a lot when you work with elite athletes if you just kind of leave them alone a little bit and observe their movement and say, why, you think about pitchers or golfers or people like that, say, wow, why does that guy do that? When in
It,
my head, I think, and that's where I'm always so leery of these trainers who think they know and coaches who think they know. And I'm like, oh, it's really hard to know the nervous system of an elite performer in any particular activity when you aren't an elite performer.
yeah. Well, I liked Greg Rose's idea that, look, the problem with elite athletes being coming coaches is there's so many different paths to that way. And you look at golf, and they changed the wording from swing faults back in the day to swing characteristics because maybe VJ swing does sway. Maybe John Daly has an overswing, right? There's Jim Furyk's swing looks ridiculous, but the kinematic sequence all looks the same. So I think we kind of throw in that's the way it should be done this way, and it's really not like that. By the way, golf tip: if you want to get inside a golfer's head, ask him, why do you do that? What right before he's hitting? Why do you do that? Or ask him which does he breathe in or out on the backswing? That always helps too. Coach, Ben Griffin wrote, it's important to have progressions and regressions for everything, including plyometrics. He showed a video doing some different single leg plyometrics. And somebody had said a little later down in it, confession time, nothing scares me more than single leg plyos. Maybe that fear isn't warranted, but I don't program there very often because of it. I think I felt like he's like a lot of trainers because if you don't have a whole system in place, right, then it can be scary if you don't have a progression. When do you feel like, is there a time for single legs? What do they have to demonstrate to you? Almost like an ACL program, right? What do they have to demonstrate to you before you say, okay, we're good for single leg plyos?
We go right at it right off the bat with just about everybody. The only people, obviously, ACLs we wouldn't, maybe, and adults we wouldn't, because I don't know if adults, I think you have to look at it and say, there has to be some sort of strength to body weight relationship that is appropriate. The problem is anybody that runs, like I look at anybody who's playing a sport is doing single leg plyos.
Sure.
Sprinting is single leg plyos. So I'm not afraid. I'm afraid of people over progressing. I'm afraid of people doing things. Maybe the obstacle is too high. That's why I love the stick the landing thing. Hey, if you give someone, I mean, we might even start our ACL guy, like our ACL guys actually, they start with what I would call a forward bound, which is literally a right to left or left to right transition. Step forward and weight that leg. Boom. Because for a lot of people, where the fear comes in is in the actual act of hopping. Taking off and landing on the same segment can really freak people out. Yet, interestingly, our ACL people, when you say, okay, let's just say it's a right ACL. All right, I want you to push off your left leg forward 2 feet, land on your right. That's not nearly as intimidating as if I said to them, literally line hop right to right. That person on the line hop might look at you and think, oh, I don't know if I can do that. And then we progress literally, like sometimes we start with lines. I have a guy right now, one of Mark's teammates who I've been taking through with ACL. He's the best athlete in our group, but he's hesitant. He's thinking, I think everybody has it in their head. Well, my knee gave out once before. What if it gives out again? What's going to make it do that? And it's changed a lot of, I wouldn't say, I say a lot of what we do for program. I wouldn't say that. It's changed some things we do for programming because I really like I like Hunter Eisenhower's drop catch idea. Really smart. And I think it really makes sense because that's what that landing is. And that's where it's really funny because now we're back to, I actually have to make a note about stick the landing because people for a long time were, what do you mean stick the landing? There's no point. Sticking the landing is pointless. And I'm like, not really. Sticking the landing really might be when we start looking at force, and I have to use the correct term, force management, not force absorption, because we don't absorb force. We only manage forces, right?
Okay.
Because that's one of the things when we were kind of going through the physics, but it's that idea of sticking the landing is teaching you to manage forces. And that's really when we think about, hey, what's injury prevention? Probably teaching you to manage forces. I'm
Mike,
literally writing this down right
is it are are we getting too crazy then if we say, okay, well, if we want to replicate something, yes, we get that stick the landing, but what about landing and then moving on? Like, for example, landing and then taking running 3 steps or four or 5 steps, just to
now.
kind
Well, I
of say,
think that's when you
hey,
get
how
into
do we get?
the double bounce thing. That's why for us, it's that mini bounce. Boom. So we're going to stick the landing, then we're going to mini bounce, then we're going to,
Okay,
and when I think that goes back kind of to the Jake Turris stuff, right? Or Keith Barr or Jill Cook or whoever it was talking about the most difficult time on the tendon is the eccentric to concentric transition. So the mini bounce gives me a gradual adaptation to that eccentric concentric transition. So I look at it sometimes and think, wow, some of the things that we did or that I did intuitively have ended up being supported by some of the data from these guys. By the way, and I'm going to make this is a premature announcement, but I'm going to make it anyway. I think I'm going to do a seminar in London in December, actually. And
okay,
it's going to be a lot of this stuff in terms of, it might be called Functional Strength Coach 8. I don't know yet, but it might be. But I think it's going to be kind of the talking a little bit about how we've incorporated what Jake Turer has said, or what Alex Matera has said, or what Tony Holler has said, or what Hunter Eisenhower has said. And what I'm thinking about doing, and it'll be interesting to see if we can get some feedback from people on this, is making some prerequisites for the seminar, saying basically that if you haven't read New Functional Training for Sports and you haven't at least watched the Start With Why lecture on YouTube, that we don't want you to come. Because then I feel like I'd love to be able to do a seminar where I don't have to start at zero. Because I always feel like I waste, you've been to every one practically, right? And you waste 2
yep,
hours in the beginning trying to lay groundwork for people who really wanted to come, but have no idea what you're talking about. So
yes,
sorry, that was
no, it's great. Hey,
a brief aside.
Mike, before we met, I functional strength coach one, you made everybody kind of, you had 2 spots left. And
Mhm.
those 2 spots, I don't know if you did, I think a lot of them were invited, but then the 2 spots left, you had to send you an email kind of like why you should go. Right. And then
Yep.
I sent you an email and said, hey, I just got back from AP mentorship, read your book. I work at Equinox, blah, blah, blah. So I love that idea. I always told Lee and Gray, like they should have a quiz before letting anybody into a practical, because then you got there and people were like, why are the toes straight on the squat? Like on the overhead squat. And they went over that a million times in the course. When you get there, then Gray and Lee have to spend all this time on these people with these questions. So I love that idea.
And that's why we do it in CFSC. That's why CFSC, you have to pass the test in
Yes.
order to come. Because if you haven't passed the written exam, then you don't know enough about what we're doing. You become what I impolitely call the seminar killer. You're
Yes.
the person who's there making it terrible for everybody else because you have no idea what we're talking about, but you want to keep raising your hand and saying, well, what about I don't understand. And so, yeah, that's what I'm thinking, is that we'll try to insert some sort of prerequisite. So at least if someone shows up unprepared, we can say, hey, we asked you to do this and we really we're not going to cover functional strength coach 1 through 7 here. We're not going to do the Start With Why lecture that's readily available on the internet. We're not going to do that stuff because we want to get through, say, let's just say 8 hours. And we say, hey, we want to get through 8 hours of stuff.
Absolutely. Good stuff. Coach, Joe Artari posted a picture of a young female doing 70-pound skater squats by one of the area's top soccer players. Once we get our athletes to 100 pounds, which is not easy, we then increase range of motion and go to a single path. And then you were like, oh boy, I retweeted, I got to show my guys. But I just wondered, uh, going back to that, do you feel like your standards aren't high enough? Do you have a system? You don't really have a system for this. Like he's saying, hey, we go to 100 pounds, then we increase the range of motion. Did Joe make you rethink, are we getting our athletes strong enough?
I think he's made me realize we can push it further. We were looking at 50% of body weight, which for our kind of 50% of body weight as a goal. So for our pro hockey players, that's around 90. But I'm looking at these girls doing 70 and thinking, 90 might not be all that ambitious. So let's go back and review those guidelines and say, hey, what could we really do? And it's funny that next week I went back with Mark and his friends right before they left and said, hey, I need everybody to be like in the 70, 80, 90 range here on this. And most of them could do it. We were all at one pad too, and two pads does make a difference. And he had a pad, plus they were using an ab mat, one of those kind of
Yeah,
yeah. So they might have been like at 2.5 pads. Either way, like it doesn't at all take away from what those young ladies were doing, because it was really impressive. But we were going through a little bit more range with maybe the same load. Like he said, they go to 100, then they work on increasing load. We would try to start with a depth that we're comfortable with. Might be 1 RX, might be 2 RXs. Most of our athletes are 1 RX. Our taller ones tend to be 2 RXs. And again, but that's the good stuff about this. I think I can remember when we thought like a girl that could do chin-ups was really strong. And then, I mean, all our girls can. Everybody does chin-ups. I think a girl that can do chin-ups with a 45-pound plate, that's really strong. But a girl that can do bodyweight chin-ups is just average to us now. So I really like when anybody, Joe in particular, but when anybody posts this stuff, you look and think, okay, here's what an unencumbered female athlete, someone who didn't have any preconception of, oh, this is good or this is bad or this is strong, would just do, because he just kept kind of PREing that person. Hey, grab a little more weight, try that kind of thing. And people just thought, hey, okay, I'll try 70. What the heck? So,
Mike, isn't that though, having those numbers really, doesn't it? I mean, looking at the Alex Natera stuff, when you were talking about the Alex Natera, you're talking about we have to take into account that person's body weight as well, because now it's a completely different load. So having a set number doesn't seem like really the proper way that we should be kind of going.
No, but if I look at those girls, I was looking and saying he's got females at 50% of body weight. If I'm looking at males and saying males should be stronger percentage wise than females, that means for us, minimally 60, 70% of body weight is probably more where we should be shooting for. And then 50, but 50 is Alex's kind of double body weight squat rationale, which is what I was aiming at initially. But now I look and think, okay, and you hate this, sounds incredibly sexist, but if I look at it and think a high school girl can do this, I fully expect a college age male to be able to do more than that, even as a percentage, not necessarily more than 70 pounds. But I'm going to guess if I looked at those girls, I'm going to say they're in the 140 range, which puts that number around 50% of their body weight. So I know now we've got to be more ambitious than 50%.
Yeah, good stuff. Coach, let's kind of go down a rabbit hole now with a couple things. You posted, it got great response. Maybe one that was kind of not against you, but it's getting tougher and tougher to find coaches interested in college jobs, combination of low pay, long hours, lots of crap. That's right. I tell you, that's a shit from the sport coaches, make college strength and conditioning less appealing. And there was definitely a lot of agreement, a lot of different ideas. Hey, it's now the NIL rights, conference realignment, some other things with the portal, right? I thought it was pretty interesting how it seems like too. I think we're. I don't know if we can come back from this. What are your thoughts on that?
I don't think so either, truthfully. I don't think it's going to. The good thing is there's two things that are going on. One, there are more jobs than there are good coaches, which is the first time ever. I just had another real good college hockey program reach out to me and say, hey, our strength coach just left. Do you have somebody? And I was like, not really. I don't have anybody in the pipeline that's looking for college hockey strength and conditioning, because it's late in the year and a bunch of guys, Potenza hired a guy, the LA Kings hired a guy, like a bunch of guys hired people. So people that probably would have moved would not be inclined to move again a month later. So, and that's what made me think, wow, it's getting harder. I literally said that to somebody, and then I thought that would make a pretty good tweet, because it is getting more difficult. And I get it. If I said to somebody, would you rather work in a private sector? Like if you work for us in the private sector, you can be around the best athletes in the world. You can make more money. You can be a lot pickier about your hours. You don't, maybe I'm the boss, but I'm not blaming you. If business isn't good and we're not making a lot of money, I'm not looking around and going, Anthony, you're doing a shit job. We're not making enough money. And
Yeah.
it's college. And I said this, particularly bad college coaches love to blame the strength coach when things go wrong. It's amazing. I can't tell you how many times I've heard someone say, oh, so-and-so wants to change strength coaches. And a lot of it was basically because they didn't have a good year. I had a college coach, a college coach with me one time tell me that school X, I will not say the school, won the national championship in actually 1AA football. The coach said to me, hey, you should go out there and visit with their strength coach. They just won the national championship. My response to him literally was, 2 years ago, they fired the guy in your position. The strength coach is the same guy. But our coach was saying to me, oh, you should go learn from this guy. And I was thinking, I don't think that this guy had anything to do with it because he was there with both coaches. But there's just a lot of that stuff. And I've talked about this before. Athletic directors aren't great. The administrators aren't great about protecting their strength coach. I had a discussion with another college administrator about that the other day because, we're getting a lot of complaints. They have one strength coach. We're getting a lot of complaints from the coaches. And I thought, well, you can't get complaints. You got one guy. And he's trying to service, 14 varsity teams or whatever it is. Of course, he's going to be a little pulled in certain directions and things aren't going to be great and it's not going to be perfect. But in college, you can be at a small school, let's say a good Division III school, be there by yourself and have 14 bosses, all of whom think they are the most important client. And all of them will complain and point the finger at you if their season isn't good. So that takes a lot of the fun out of it. I think there's a lot that we have to do. And you said that's how you get into NIL and the portal. And
Yeah.
with another college football strength coach, who said the whole program's developmental now because I have 40 new guys out of the transfer portal. 40.
Jeez.
Imagine bringing in 40 guys, sophomores, juniors, seniors, grad students, all coming into your strength and conditioning program. Because strength and conditioning used to be a situation where, hey, you developed your guys, you brought your guys along. By the time, if you had 50 seniors, they were usually really, really good at your program. They understood what was going on. Now you could have 5 guys show up like that who come from completely different universes than maybe you were in. So that's why somebody said, I don't know. I don't think NCAA is ever going to recover from the NIL thing. I really don't. I think that was a Pandora's box that they opened up, and then they're looking and going, oh my God, I want to slam the lid on this thing. But I can't do it. And
It's almost like they need a cap. They need a cap.
Right. Well,
right?
what's going to happen is it's only going to be big state schools that have huge budgets. The private schools aren't going to be able to do it. Even the Stanfords and places like that, Stanford, Notre Dame, those kind of schools that have really worked hard to keep high academic standards and to stay competitive at Division I level. At the NIL level, when those schools are costing $60 or $70 or $80,000 a year, and you're competing against state schools where kids can go for 20, and then they're upping the scholarship numbers. There's just so much. Whoever's directing this, Charlie Baker, our former governor in Massachusetts, which tells you a lot, I guess, but whoever's in charge of this whole mess really has got to get their finger back on the pulse and say, hey, wait a second, we've made some horrible errors. I'd be very happy if they said, we're going to let basketball and football be their own entities. And they can freaking have TV contracts, pay the guys whatever they want. And we're just going to let everybody else go back to business as usual. Because what they've done instead is they've made a mess for everybody.
Yeah.
And that is maybe not solvable.
Yeah. I think they need the cap. Coach, you wrote, I do believe good S&C translates. I think bad S&C coaches believe they don't affect wins and losses. It's no different than sport coaches blaming S&C coaches. I think S&C, I think there aren't enough good coaches. There was a response I thought was kind of ridiculous. He posted a Buddy Morris video saying, you're saying by your logic, Buddy Morris is not a good strength coach, because in the video, Buddy's saying, I've never seen a strength coach win a championship. And really, it's you would if you saw the video. I don't know if you watched it. If you'd agree
Didn't watch
100%
the
with
video.
what Buddy. It's exactly you would agree 100%. Yes, you don't coach strength coaches don't play the game. So I guess what I want you to do is clarify what does I do believe good S&C translates to. I know injury.
I think it translates to wins and losses. I'm not saying you're going to win the Super Bowl because you have a good strength coach,
Yep.
but I am going to tell you that programs with good strength coaches tend to win more games than programs with bad strength coaches. I really firmly believe that. And yes, recruiting can overcome that, particularly more at the college level. At the pro level, I think less so because you don't get to recruit, you're drafting. It's a little bit different. And I do think good programming really makes a difference at those levels. And it's an old article, but I think I posted that article, The Importance of the Strength and Conditioning Coach. And at one point in the NFL, the Super Bowl had been Mike Wojcik, Rusty Jones, Johnny Parker, Al Miller. Some version of those, either one of them was in it or they were against each other. And between them, I don't know about Al Miller. I don't know what his number of Super Bowl wins. I think Johnny was 2. I think Mike Wojcik was 6. Rusty was 0 for, which is amazing in Buffalo, but probably got to 6 or 7 Super Bowls when he was in Buffalo. And I look at that and think, it's really, so you're going to look at that and say, oh, they all had better players and they all had better coaching staffs. And I'm like, yep, maybe they all did have good players at pro sports. Maybe they all did have good coaching staffs, but there had to be something about what those guys were doing that was in fact making a difference and moving the needle. And I really believe this. The people who say that it doesn't matter, I think if you were winning, you'd believe it mattered. I think at Boston University hockey, I think I helped us win. I think if you asked Jack Parker, he would say, yes, what Mike Boyle did help us win. And consistently over time, we were healthy and we won a lot of games.
Healthy.
So, yeah,
Healthy.
it's
I mean,
strength and conditioning, right? Availability. But if you do a good job with your strength and conditioning, and now we call it load management, we've got all these crazy terms, but we were really good about practice design. We were really good about time off. We had some fights. We had some inter-staff fighting about what we should be doing, how we should be responding to losses, things like that. But that's why, how many programs do you see now where they're naming strength coaches things like assistant head coach, chief of staff, things like that? Because the good coaches, and I've said this, and I said that in that same thread, the good coaches are really good to their strength and conditioning coaches. They pay them well. They treat them well. They treat them as a member of their staff. And that tends to translate.
Yeah. I think it goes, you wrote an article that was on Simply Faster. Are we our own worst enemies? And I think this can also be said for personal training, right? Personal training, strength and conditioning has the, what you said, too often we looked and act like meatheads. And then, personal training, you could just look at the influencer as the meathead, right? It's the same idea. Not all of them, don't get me wrong. There's plenty of good influencers, but I think it's a very similar thing. We just kind of group them and people have a perceived notion about what that person is going to be. But then we also act like idiots so many times. And I see it in my own gym, but
You said it last week on the podcast. You said that people ask you, why is your retention so good?
Yeah.
And your retention is good because you probably do a good job with your clients and you take good care of your clients. As a result, you have good retention. And I mentioned it in that same episode. It doesn't surprise me that Mark Fisher's business does well, that Luca Hocevar's business does well, that Cassie Day's business does well. When I look at, and that's why I said, I think sometimes it's people who are not willing to be introspective enough and not willing. I think you have to look at yourself and say, am I part of the solution or am I part of the problem? I can remember years ago, and I hate to give Vern Gannabetta credit because he's such a crotchety old, what, but I remember him at a seminar saying, you become a better strength coach when you realize that injuries in training especially are your fault. And I remember thinking, wow, injuries in training are my fault. And that was a big change point for me in terms of, hey, I'm going to be way more cognizant of our injury trends. I'm going to be really cognizant of, okay, what's going on? Do I have people consistently leaving the weight room to go to the training room? Because, and that was that other thread about, I don't know, you saw that one about trap bar deadlift. If someone we keep having people leave the weight room because they hurt their back or their back is sore. We've got, like I said, back in the bad old days, 20% of our football players were in the training room actively doing something for low back pain. And I thought, 20% is kind of a high number. I need to figure out how we can make that number 0. And what do we think contributes to that number? And I think that's the stuff. Those are the questions that, as a good strength and conditioning coach, you should be asking yourself. You should be looking at your injury stats every year and saying, where are we? Where are we in the league? Where are we in, whatever, man, games lost, however we're calculating that particular injury stat. And then look at that and think, wow, do we have a lot of blank? I've seen people, I don't know why we have so many ACLs. And then you look at the program, you think, well, you have so many ACLs because you don't do enough unilateral work. You're not doing the things that you could be doing to present. Right? Or we had a lot of separated shoulders, or we have a lot of back pain, or whatever it is. You're not being introspective enough to look at the end of every season and say, how do I solve my problem? And I think maybe that's what made me good. I don't know, but I did that from the get-go. And maybe that's my athletic training background. I don't know either, but I always looked at both. I would look at our numbers, our speed numbers, our vertical jump numbers. I'd look at how many guys cleaned over 300 pounds, how many guys benched over 300 pounds, how many guys squatted over 400 pounds. So I'd look at strength that way. And then I'd look at what our injury report said. These were injuries. This was a season-ending injury. These were things that people were treated for. I just look at that information that came out of our training room and say, okay, are there things that we can do that will make those numbers go down? And I always believed that we could.
Yeah.
And I'd say that I've been successful. I've been in a situation. I haven't worked with a lot of losing teams. If we go back through even historically at Boston University, one year we were second or third or fourth or something for the Sears Trophy, which is the top athletic department in the nation, because our field hockey team had made the NCAA tournament. Our hockey team, I think it might have been 95 when we won the national championship, but you get points for all that stuff. Our basketball team had made the NCAA tournament. Our football team had made the 1AA playoffs. We had a lot of really successful teams. And I honestly believed in all of those team settings, I felt like I impacted those teams positively. So if you're not feeling like you're impacting those teams positively, I have no idea why you're doing this job.
Yeah. Mike, I think in that article, one thing maybe that we didn't talk about was of the importance of all this, of what you did, was you actively tried to find that out, but you also went into the training room and you kept your mouth shut. You talked about that and you took notes. And I think that's so important. I can tell you that in the beginning of my golf fitness business, I would go to lessons. I would say, hey, Mike, is it okay if I sit on your lesson? Can you ask your pro if it's okay? I come up to the country club, and the pros loved it, right? Because they don't want to let you in there. You're infringing on their finances, possibly, right? Like, hey, you're working with this guy, whatever. I don't know this guy, whatever. Then I come in and I just keep my mouth shut, let them drive the bus, as they like to say at TPI. But people respect that. You were talking about, we act like meatheads, but when you're doing something like that, when you're going and you're gaining the respect of the medical team.
Exactly. But that's this other stuff I look at and think, how can everybody not be doing that? I don't understand. I used to think if someone got hurt, I want to be in the meeting and I want to understand what the doctor is thinking, and I want to understand what he thinks we can and can't do in this particular situation. And I want to be able to ask him, because sometimes I would have situations where I might ask the athletic trainer and they would say, well, I'm not sure, I didn't ask that question. And I would always think, like you said, is it all right if I come in? Is it all right if I take notes? And then at the end, I remember I started with our orthopedic guy at BU, and I would say, okay, doc, what could I do that would screw this up? And then he might immediately say, well, we definitely don't want to do blank. And I'd be like, okay. And then I'd say, well, what about this? Oh, yeah, you can do that. That's not a problem at all. And whatever kind of this and that it was, but it was that opportunity to have that discussion and hear, because again, not that I always agreed with the doctors. I can remember what one of the doctors saying, well, this guy should never do squats again. And I was kind of, can't play football if he never does squats again. I don't know if that's realistic. I had doctors say, well, he can no squats, but he can do lunges. And then I'd show them a split squat and they'd say, yeah, that's a lunge. He can do that. And I would be like, It's actually not. No, it's not a
Yeah,
line. I'm not going to have a terminology fight with you here right now. I'm just trying to get some idea of what you're against and what what my pitfall might be down the road in the rehab process here. So yeah, I think way too many people in our field are not good advocates for themselves or for their athletes, and they stay in their little silo because it's where they're comfortable. And I look at it and think, I mean, hey, how many times, right? Get comfortable with being uncomfortable, right? You hear all these cliches, but you've got to be willing to venture out of your comfort zone a little bit and go places where maybe your peers have not historically been, and try to develop relationships. I think I used to go to Dan Dyrick's evals every chance I could get. And the amount that I would learn watching Dan and listening to Dan, even watching the way he explained to athletes what their problem was, what he was going to do. And it's like watching speakers, right? I'd watch his language or listen to his language and say, okay, I really understand now when I'm trying to explain to somebody what this problem is, how we can do that. And I think anytime you get a chance to be around people better than you at anything, you should take that opportunity.
sure. At the end of the day, it's just really having a growth mindset and really understanding, you might have to spend a little bit more time. You might have to travel a little bit. Look at your 25 years, 25 mistakes article. I wish I had visited more people more often, and you had already been doing that, but you had wished you had done it more. It's something that we all always have talked about on this for a long time. So I think that having that growth mindset and, like you said, being uncomfortable and like being somebody who's 65 and been in this business for a long time. If you mentioned three people before who are, I think Tony Holler might be your age, but the other three I think are like 30 years old.
Right.
It's having that open mind to allow new ideas to come in from people that you might feel like, hey, they shouldn't be telling me, I should be telling them that, which is wrong.
Right. I look at that and think, I'm not threatened by Hunter Eisenhower or Jake Turtle. I just look at them and think they're really smart young guys. Alex Natera probably falls in the middle between Tony
Yeah.
and Jake and Hunter, but smart. Doesn't make any difference to me what age is associated with smart. If I think someone is doing something that's interesting, I've just realized, hey, why not reach out? And I reach out in the most humble way. I always say to people, I'll write an email. Hi, my name's Michael Boyle. I'm a strength and conditioning coach based in Boston, blah, blah, blah. Never thinking, not, hey, it's Mike Boyle, and expecting, oh, everybody's going to know do you know who I am kind of thing. And so they get a nice, polite email from me or a voicemail or a text or whatever it is. And everybody always responds. I've been able to correspond with Alex and with Tony and with Jake and with Hunter, all these people, because I've approached them in a humble and respectful manner with, like you said, that growth mindset. You're doing something I think is interesting. I'd like to learn from you. I'd like you to help me help my athletes, because ultimately we're all sort of our real circle of influence is probably pretty small in terms of training. Okay, these are the people that I'm going to train. These are the people that I'm going to really, and then I can expand that circle through things like this, through the podcast, through speaking, through educating our staff, whatever it is. But I always have to start with myself and say, okay, I'm going to work consistently on my own education so that I can then hopefully, if you think about the dropping a pebble in the ripples, like that's the way I kind of look at this stuff and say, okay, I want to drop the pebble in the water and watch the ripples go out, and hopefully the Hunter Eisenhower ripples or the Jake Turr ripples or whatever it is move out further, and more people think, oh, if Mike Boyle thinks this guy's smart, maybe I should go listen to this podcast, or maybe I
Yeah.
should buy this program.
Mike, I think one last thing on that is that also it's not looking at if you don't agree with everything from that person. So, for example, we'll mention a couple of people like Vern Gambetta, Gary Gray, maybe Todd Durkin and Martin Rooney. All four of them might not be, you'll look at everything that they're doing, but you might take some coaching things and energy things and passionate things from Martin or Todd. You might take some old things from Vern or Gary Gray's concepts. Even though you don't agree with a lot of that stuff, there are things in there that you can pull out. And I think when you go back to dislike versus disagree, right? You can't just take, okay, Gary Gray's stuff is ridiculous or whatever you believe, and then say there's nothing there for you. You got to remember there's always something in there that might help you.
Right. I mean, and I think you could probably expand it and say, dislike, disagree, and ignore. Right. I mean,
Ooh.
I might dislike somebody. I might disagree with them. I'm not going to ignore them. I'm going to write that idea down too. So.
Yeah, there you go. Good stuff, Coach. Thank you for doing this. It's been awesome. I appreciate you, and we'll talk to you next time.
Thanks, Ant. I appreciate it.
Hey, Strength Coach Podcast family. This is Coach Joe from the Business of Strength and Varsity House Gym, and I'm here to bring you the second part of our 3-part series, The Pillars of Scale, Part 2 today, People. The right people can make all the difference in your business, so much so that it's really hard for me to imagine where Varsity House would be today without some of our key employees. I look back at what has happened to the business at each stage of the business, and it was almost always related to a who, not a process or a thing, not some fancy marketing, ploy, not just a 6-week transformation or something that made us a few bucks, but it was really a adding another key cog to the component of management, doing the work, leading the team, and seeing the vision through to the end of the mission. And, when I look at like our people, when I brought in Dan as a business partner, that took the business to another level. When we brought in Big Mike quickly became our training director and head coach, and then now our GM at our headquarters. That changed the dynamic of the business. When Adam came in, we had this great technical coach who had a great business acumen mind that changed the business. So in the second part of your scaling dream of what you want to do, you have to start thinking deep and hard about what people do I need? What skill sets do I need on my team to take this to the next level? You definitely don't want to just replicate your skill sets. You want to add things that you don't have. Dan does things better in other areas that I don't. He's great with the finances. He's great with keeping the trains on time. He's a very detailed guy when it comes to the follow through, where I'm more of a creative and I enjoy the marketing and sales. Adam's a great technical coach and is somebody who loves data and tracking data and understanding the data that makes our business and training run from a financial and X's and O's standpoint. And Big Mike, as he likes to say, could sell ketchup popsicle to a lady with wearing white gloves. Don't ask. So you have to get the right people on your team. And so first thing that you have there is, knowing the skill sets that you need. Are you adverse to sales? Well, you probably need somebody who loves sales. Do you not want to be on the gym floor? You got to find somebody who loves to train and wants to be an impactful coach. On top of that, the cornerstone of hiring people is your core values. And I see a lot of people putting core values on their walls as like catchphrases. Ours are hungry, humble, committed, and socially smart. And we have defined them to the point where we understand exactly what we're looking for. And we've created a definition around hungry, humble, committed, and smart that fits our business. So when I'm interviewing people, hiring people, I'm looking for a great cultural fit first, then skill set second, right? Cultural fit first. Is this person going to integrate with the team and be a great component to the team? Do they have the skill sets that we need to move forward, right? And what I'm looking for. And that really depends on the role and what we're hiring them for. Obviously, if it's just hiring a coach role versus a facility leader versus a sales rep versus a marketing director or something like that, the skill sets have to change a little bit. But getting clear on your core values and the skill sets you need so that you're matching up your culture with the skill sets that are going to move your business forward. You have to think about adding people to your business, and another great Dan Sullivan book, Who Not How. When you add people, it doesn't double the capacity. So when Dan came in, People think, oh, I doubled the ability to do stuff. No, it 10x the ability to do stuff because two great minds collaborating, bouncing ideas off each other. It wasn't just, hey, we got 50 calls to make. You do 25, I'll do 25. It was ideas, coaching, leadership, consistency, being able to take a Sunday off here and there and switch schedules with somebody. All the things that are wrapped around having a solid number two next to you that gets it, wants it, and has the capacity to deliver on an A+ level consistently. That was really the key for us. And it's not a 2x process. It's a 10x process when you bring in the right people. We've recently hired a new coach who's got lots of education and experience at the collegiate level. We think he's going to level up the training product immeasurably. And it's already paying dividends. As soon as he got on the floor, it was obvious to see the difference in his ability. And it put the whole team on notice in a sense where it was like, oh, wow, this guy's really good. We can learn a lot from him. And we probably got to tighten things up a little bit. There's a lot of things here that we see him doing that maybe we should be doing too, right? So it instantly added a level of expertise and professionalism to the training product. So that's something that was done on purpose. We knew exactly what we were looking for. We went out and recruited that person, and we narrowed it down to a group of a few people who had a similar skill set. And we picked the best person who was the best cultural fit, that we felt had the best personality and was going to integrate into our team the best. So people is the second pillar. You have to really think long and hard about who you need on your team, what their payroll looks like, what that scale looks like, how you're going to take care of them and keep them happy for, 1, 3, 5, 10 years. We're going on, I have employees, Big Mike, 15 years, Adam, 10 years, Joey, 12 years, right? We just recently had someone leave, but they were with us for 10 years. So the longevity has to be there. And the thought process of these people has to be, hey, if we keep this person for 10 years, what does that look like, right? Don't think small, think long, and think long and hard about what it looks like in your business. And lastly, just as a reminder, remember, don't duplicate skill sets, get new skill sets into your business. So that's tip 2. People, let's get to scaling, grow our gyms, get out there and make the industry better.
Welcome back to Naamly's Maximizing the Member Experience segment, where we delve into the strategies and tactics that elevate your business and helps you foster personalized connections at scale. Let's dive into a crucial and underrated aspect of crafting this perfect member experience: leading from the front. It's all about the power of clear, caring, and decisive leadership and how it can profoundly influence both your staff and members' experiences. For if you really think about it, there are really 3 stakeholders. It's you, the leader, and then the member, and then the staff that is responsible for delivering the experience to the member. Now, great leadership isn't just about giving orders or getting standards. It's about embodying the qualities you want to see in your team and your gym members. When leaders step up, take action, and show genuine care and commitment, it sets a powerful example that resonates throughout the entire gym. Now, let's start with the impact on staff. After all, they are the vehicles that deliver that experience. Now, when gym owners and managers lead from the front, it does more than just motivate. It inspires. This approach builds trust and respect, which are crucial for a harmonious workplace. Staff members who see their leaders actively participating, whether it's in a daily gym operations or in taking the time to listen to member concerns, feel supported and valued. This, in turn, empowers them to perform their best, creating a ripple effect that enhances the overall environment of the gym. Now let's shift focus to the gym members. Members are not just looking for a place to work out, they're looking for an experience, a community. They value transparency and dedication from their leaders. When members see that the leadership is actively involved and genuinely cares about the fitness journey and well-being, it builds loyalty and satisfaction. This visible commitment from the top can inspire members to engage more deeply with the gym, participate in community events, and even take on leadership roles within the member community. So how can you enhance leading from the front today? It all begins with being very clear on where you want to go. Your goal. And then you set up this clarity, not just for everybody, but for your staff, for your members, and just pave that path. And then, since you're leading from the front, you want to be very present and intentional in everything you do. Spend social time on the gym floor, participate in a class, and continue to show genuine interest in both your staff's and members' goals and challenges. Address issues promptly and decisively, always with the mindset towards solutions and improvements. Remember, effective leadership is about more than just guiding others. It's about being part of the team, sharing in the challenges and triumphs, and setting a standard of excellence that everyone aspires to. By leading from the front, you not only enhance the member experience, but also foster a strong, committed community that grows together. Now, wasn't that your eventual goal to begin with? Stay strong, stay inspired, and lead from the front. All right, then, this is Sumit Seth, co-founder of Naamly. If you enjoyed this segment and are interested in getting more insights on elevating your member experience and setting your business up for success, then click the link to get access to more such resources.
All right, that's going to do it for episode 386 of the Strength Coach Podcast. The show notes are at strengthcoachpodcast.com. Don't forget, you can try both strengthcoach.com and nbsc.tv out for 7 days for free. Go to those respective websites for your free trial. Special thanks to Chris Parrier and the folks over at Perform Better. The summits are over, but the biggest sale of the year is going on now at Perform Better, the summer sale. 118 products, up to 40% off. Rowers, air bikes, dumbbells, kettlebells, racks of all kinds, bands of all kinds, so much more. Check it all out at performbetter.com. Thanks to Coach Boyle for sharing his insights and philosophies into the world of strength and conditioning and performance enhancement. Thanks to Sumit Seth and Naamly, helping build relationships through personalized communication so your members stay longer and pay longer. Check out the show notes for Naamly's free Fitness Business Boost Bundle. 3 gifts to you: a checklist, 51 ways to acquire clients without running ads, a cheat sheet, 12 places to look to hire star trainers, and a guide, 9 secrets to increase your retention. Thanks to Coach Joe and the team at Business of Strength. Don't forget the Strongest Year Retreat, September 19th and 20th, Scottsdale, Arizona. You can save $300. It is a 2-day gym business specific mastermind, lectures, workshops, breakout sessions, social networking events for gym owners who want to scale their business beyond $500K. Go to BOS Retreat, Business of Strength, BOSRetreat.com for more info. Use the code StrengthCoach300 for a $300 discount. Guys, that's going to do it for this episode. My name's Anthony Rana. Thanks for listening, and I'll speak to you next time.